Welcome to Capitol Report with State Representative David Bly. I'm Mike Howard. Representative, thanks for joining us in the studio.
Good to see you again, Michael.
Well, let's talk about the state budget. It's the big issue this session, dealing with about $1 billion budget deficit. And let's, in particular, talk about the higher education budget, because it's a committee that you serve on.
Yeah, right. And all the committees are forming their proposed budgets that will in case the cuts that will have to be there. And I think Chair Rukavina came up with a very good bill. Essentially what we've done is we have had to cut the institutions, gladly, not as deeply as might have had to otherwise, but protected them somewhat. They're still getting deep cuts, and wanting to preserve the areas where students are served. Try to keep tuition low. I mean, we are in the two-year colleges number 2, I think, now in the cost of tuition for those institutions, which is as we compare ourselves to other states in the country, kind of distressing. But the other piece of it was that I think he was able to preserve the state grant program, which is the one thing that the state does to help all students, regardless of the institution that they go to, whether it's private or public or private for-profit or nonprofit. Either way, it's a huge thing. As far as I understand, it's never been cut in the past, and I think we are reducing some of the extra things that go with it a little bit, but trying to keep it intact as much as possible.
And as I understand, the state grant program has been utilized by many more folks. With the downturn in the economy, people are out of work, they need to get retrained, so it's a program that's vital towards emerging from this recession.
One of the terrible ironies of the situation that we're in, where in the downturn of the economy, we're forced to cut these institutions, and they're growing. You know, they have more students than they've ever had before, and that's a tough place to put them in. And so trying to preserve some of the aid that would go to help students attend those schools is really important.
Well, I think that kind of sets up broadly a big challenge with dealing with a budget deficit that's been caused by this recession, when there are so many areas like higher education, like transportation, infrastructure investments, things that if we invest in these things, they can help us grow our economy in the long term. The catch-22 is the deficit.
As I've talked with you before in the past, that if we stop investing in those things, it makes it harder for the middle class to be healthy. And the very things that, when we talk about a business climate and we say, we want to make sure that businesses can prosper and do well. Well, if consumers and customers can't get to those stores because the roads are so bad, or if they can't afford to purchase the things at the stores, that's also part of the problem. And so we need to make sure that we're investing in the infrastructure that keeps that middle class vital and vibrant. So that's one of the things that I think is really important, that unfortunately we seem to be retreating from if we only focus on making sure that we don't raise any revenue, or we don't do anything that would actually could help us maintain some of that. And I think we're trying to be careful in the cuts that we make, so that once the economy recovers, we haven't lost the ability to bring back some of those things that are so important.
Yeah, it sounds very difficult to try to thread the needle in a sense, to take care of the fiscal challenges of today while making sure you're still preparing for the future.
And the other thing, of course, is as people lose their jobs or whatever, and they have greater and greater needs. I mean, there are now more students in schools receiving free and reduced lunch. There are people who need unemployment insurance, and those needs grow as the economy is turning down, and we need to make sure that we can provide for people when they are in need.
We've got about a minute left, and other than the budget, there are some legislative issues important to your district you're working on. We've talked many times in the past about the Dan Patch line, and what's the update there?
Well, the update there is I'm still working to try to lift that gag order that keeps us from talking about it. Years ago, as I think I've said, that there was a study done to see whether or not commuter rail would be viable in the Northfield area, and it showed there would be a lot of ridership in this corridor. And so I know we have conflicts with some of the suburban communities, and the thing that's frustrating though is that even if we didn't run that line all the way that it would go before, we can't talk about partial parts of the line that might connect elsewhere, because the study is under this gag order. And it's very frustrating. I think in order to come to a solution so Northfield isn't bypassed by all the other talk about rail development, we need to remove that. I think it's the only one in the state, and that's just unfair.
Right. So let's at least have the conversation,
Right.
and that's what your
And figure out
legislation would do.
another solution, if not the one that's there in the books. Yeah.
Well, we'll ask you to come back and update us on that and the budget situation. But thanks for taking the time
Sure,
to come
you
in.
bet. It's great.
This has been Capitol Report with State Representative David Bly.